What's up, everyone? My name is Connor. Welcome to my channel where I read and review and talk about books. Today we're going to be talking about a book called Safety Measures by Maeve Hazel. So, very funny about this book. Normally when I read on my phone because I just prefer to have like ebooks on my phone. Very rarely when I read on this channel am I going to be reading from a physical book. Funny story about how I got this book. Originally, my boyfriend Soren had tried to order this book, A Bone in His Teeth, on Barnes & Noble's, like the Barnes & Noble's website, because my boyfriend actually prefers to have physical copies than ebooks. He's like the exact opposite of me. So he really wanted this book to be able to read. And the day was supposed to come in, we were so excited to open it because, like, I mean, come on, like, look at this cover, it's absolutely gorgeous, and we were very excited for it, and we ripped open the thing that it was in, and then this came out, and I'm like, that's not A Bone in His Teeth. So we didn't order this book, but it was sent to us, and like we did eventually manage to like get this in, and they said that we could just keep this book, which honestly I can tell why they didn't want it back. This is just a contemporary romance. It's got a lot going on with it. You can see, like, all of the little, like, tabs that I put in it to, like, take notes. It's a lot. It's just a lot. Quick disclaimer before I get into this, as always, I just wanted to say that reviews are for readers. If you did happen to read this book and enjoy it, and you're unable to handle any kind of criticism towards it, I do recommend closing out of this video right now. I'd rather you protect your peace, because this is simply my own opinion on this book, and it's not meant to be a personal attack towards anyone that is a fan of this book or even the author herself. And same goes for if you are the author or friends and family of the author and you manage to stumble on this video. This video is not for you. You have been warned. The description is one kiss, one rule, one promise. Blaze North. I'll be so real, before I read this, I had like there was a split second where I thought, is this a gay contemporary romance? Because the two main characters' names are Blaze and Aries. And I don't know, I feel like Blaze just sounds like a very masculine name to me, but no, she is a woman. Blaze North. The aftermath of my parents' death was the toughest time in my life, but at least I had him. He was there every step of the way, wiped the tears I shed, and made me smile when I'd forgotten how to, until he became the reason why I had to protect my heart with one simple rule: no more kissing. 6 years later, because life had a great sense of humor, I found myself having to use that same rule on the man who inspired it. It's no surprise it didn't work. After all, my heart was never my own to protect. It belonged to Aries Hart the entire time. Yeah, his last name is Hart, but like H-A-R-T, so it's like, it's really weird. Aries Hart. Growing up, I didn't have a perfect example of what love should look like. My parents were the definition of a disaster, and I didn't intend to end up the same way. So I made myself a promise. To this day, I followed it blindly, even if in the process I had to hurt the one I cared about the most. But what I hadn't realized was that the key to keeping my promise was right next to me the entire time. Blaze North gave my vow purpose, and when I was finally ready to make up for my mistakes, the unexpected happened. Yeah, so honestly, when I started reading this, I thought that it would be kind of like this, like very obviously I could tell it was not going to be a good book just from the description, but I thought that it would be kind of like bad contemporary romance that you like can still kind of take the shit out of and like, laugh at and like have a fun time while you read it. Kind of like the same way my boyfriend enjoys watching The Room. But it was not a fun time to read. And as I get more into it, you guys will start to understand. Right off the bat, when you open the book, it has a playlist. It has a playlist listed with like all these songs, so I guess that you can listen to it while you read and get an idea of what the theme is for all of this. I haven't heard any of these songs except for Bad Liar by Imagine Dragons. So I didn't listen to this playlist because I wasn't about to go that far. This is one of, like, you know, thing that I can say that I think, you know, I mean, it's bare minimum, it's baseline minimum, but she did include a page of trigger warnings. It's listed under heavy and then moderate. For the heavy triggers, it is alcoholism, addiction, open door consensual sex, death of parents, emotional abuse, and abandonment. I disagree with some of the, one of the moderate trigger warnings is, mention of cancer and violence. There was not a moderate mention of cancer. There was a mention of cancer exactly twice in this book. It was so unimportant that it's just like, it was something that, you know, I forgot about until it was mentioned. It was mentioned once at the beginning of the book, and then I totally forgot about it until it was very briefly in like one sentence mentioned a second time, like more than halfway through the book. So like, thanks for putting it there, but honestly, the whole cancer thing shouldn't have been in the book anyway, because it contributed nothing to the story, and I will get into that later. It also, I guess I do appreciate this. It has a dictionary where it lists all of the chapters with spice, just in case you either want to jump to that or would like to avoid that. I did appreciate that. I did think that that was done well. But what I didn't like was at the very bottom, underneath the list of all the chapters, it says, "Get your self-care toys ready." Disgusting. Stop that. So we start the story when Blaze is 15 years old. They're sitting on top of a rooftop at night, being teenagers. His stare captures my throat in a tight grip. Our breaths come out wobbly, and I don't know why it's so hard to think, or how I can feel his eyes on me but not see them. Yeah, how do you know that he's staring at your throat if it's too dark for you to see his eyes? I would also like to know how you can feel his eyes on you but not see them. They have a sloppy makeout session, and this is her first time kissing someone, and everything is going great, but then he suddenly pushes her away and goes back inside his house. I guess their houses are close enough where he can easily jump from his roof to hers. I personally have never lived anywhere where this kind of thing was possible, but I'm sure it does exist. Obviously, she gets really upset because he just suddenly leaves without telling her why. If he doesn't walk outside, I'll never let him kiss me again. Please come. Lights flick off along with the proof of his existence. No, let me rectify. I'll never let anyone kiss me again. I feel like the author has never had the misfortune of growing up mediocre or ugly, because I'll tell you guys right now, I was the ugly girl growing up in high school. For those of you who don't know, I am trans. I look okay now after going through a second puberty, but I was that awkward and undesirable girl, and basically any guy I expressed feelings for were like, yeah, no, I don't like you like that. So, like, eventually rejection was just so normal to me that there came a point that I pretty much expected it to happen. This girl experiences rejection one time in her life and decides she's never going to let another man kiss her ever again. And that's a pretty extreme reaction, girly pop. We jump to the present, 5 or 6 years later, and these two are still in contact with each other as adults. Going into this, I thought that this was going to be a situation where they reunited after several years of not seeing each other, but no, they continued to live next to each other over the next, however many years. He sends her good night texts every single night and is still very much present in her life, to the point where it does sound like they're dating, but they're not. I think it is so wild that she still allows him to be this close to her without ever once being like, hey, are we going to talk about what you did that night? Because how dare you kiss me, then leave me heartbroken on the roof and act like nothing happened for 6 years. They even work at the same bookstore slash coffee shop together. So Blaze is a writer living with her grandmother, and they have this super cliche moment where they're lovingly making waffles together and talking about her dead parents. Blaze started writing as a way to cope with the loss, and her grandmother tells her how she's so much like her mother and how they'd be so proud of her. This felt, I mean, like, I guess it was sweet, but it felt very bizarre for me to read personally because I don't have any kind of positive relationship with either set of my grandparents. So just like reading this weird cookie cutter type of interaction between the two of them was just like, I mean, I guess people have that kind of relationship and that's like realistic for some people, but not mine. I cannot relate to Blaze in any way because she kind of feels like this cookie cutter upper middle class white girl with a well-adjusted family despite the dead parents thing. And she's also just really kind of boring. This chapter does suddenly take a wild turn when Nana has a stroke in the middle of making breakfast, and I will say that I was not expecting that, so good job, Maeve, I guess. Really threw a curveball at me on that one. I felt like the Mr. Krabs meme reading this part. It went from disgustingly domestic to dying grandma so quickly. We then jump to Aries' perspective, and he's rushing to the hospital to meet Blaze and his younger brother, August. Did a doctor come up to you yet, I ask? She fidgets on her feet, then looks like she just came back from whatever movie her mind was playing. This sentence read really weird. I feel like it would have been better if he had just said, have you spoken to a doctor yet? And also, what does fidget on her feet mean? What is she doing? Are her feet the things that are fidgeting? I've never heard this phrase before, so I have no clue what I'm supposed to be visualizing when I read that line. Blaze has to go cry alone in the bathroom, and Aries is like, she needs a moment to collect herself, so I'll give her that space. But this man can't even wait more than a few minutes before he's like, I have to go to her. And they do that thing where they bump into each other as he's going to check on her, and this part was just so ridiculous. Blaze squeezes her eyes a few times, looking like she's trying to regain her vision. She wakens in my hands, arms circling my neck while I steady us both. Whoa, you okay? August joins us as soon as he notices the shift in Blaze's state, concern etched in his features. Yeah, she tries to raise the head that just fell onto my chest but fails. I think I'm a bit dizzy, Blaze murmurs the words, and I look up at August. Can you bring her some water? Yeah, that, like, the visual for that was just really weird, like, dramatic. Like, it was literally just one of those dramatic, faint moments, but she's, like, got her arms wrapped around his neck, like, oh, I'm just so dizzy. I was like, what? What am I reading? We learn in this chapter that the three of them basically grew up together, and Aries has felt the need to care for her since the day she was born, which made me wonder how much older this guy is than her. How old was he when they made out on the rooftop? Because I'm starting to wonder if maybe he stopped himself for reasons other than commitment issues. We also learned that Blaze has a seafood allergy, and I was so positive that this was going to come up later in the book as like this big moment of drama where she eats something she didn't realize had seafood in it. But this never gets mentioned again, like at all in the book. I legitimately forgot that it was even a thing until I finished the book and went back over my notes to make edits. We jump back to Blaze, and this chapter kind of bounces back and forth to like her being playful and flirty with Aries, and then being really distraught that her only living family member is fighting for her life in the hospital. I remember there was a day where I got news that my half-brother was hospitalized, and I'm not even that close with him, but I remember being too numb and anxious to have lighthearted moments that day I got the news, so I have a really hard time believing that someone who witnessed their grandmother almost die right in front of her could possibly have it in her to laugh over something stupid like Aries having cupcake icing smeared on his face. She tries to leave Aries and August in order to go home and grab some things that her nana might need, and Aries is really annoyingly overbearing. Like he continuously is trying to tell her that he'll drive her, and she's like, no, I'd like to be alone for a bit. And this man completely ignores her and follows her to her car, and she has to reiterate multiple times that she's fine and wants to be alone, but this man is so paternalistic and overbearing and doesn't believe her. And I just can't believe that he has the audacity to be breathing down her throat like this when they're not romantically involved. My guy, you don't get to act like her overprotective boyfriend after what you did to her at 15. And honestly, Blaze is just as bad because she's constantly finding comfort in his actions despite the fact that this man did what he did and still insists on acting like they're an item. Like, have some self-respect, my queen. You deserve better than this. Aries strikes me as the type of guy who refuses to date her, but will stick his nose into her love life and find things to complain about her current boyfriend. His strong embrace covers me like a shield, and my forehead drops on his chest. For the first time in years, I allow myself to tell his heart the story of mine. What does that mean? I allow myself to tell his heart the story of mine. What does that mean, Maeve? I have questions. So Blaze gets home and we're introduced to Aries and August's estranged mother, Tamara, who struggles with addiction. She claims to be 2 months sober and wants to see her sons, but Blaze tells her that now is not a good time due to everything that's going on with her grandmother in the hospital. She tells her that she needs to go to rehab, but Tamara can't afford it, so Blaze says that she'll pay for it because she's already using her inheritance money to pay for Nana's hospital bills, and she'll regret it if she doesn't because despite their complicated relationship, she still sees Tamara as this motherly figure from her childhood. I can see where this book is going already, and I actually hate this relationship dynamic. I know it's not incest, but it almost feels like it is, because we're told really early on how intertwined these two families are, and how these characters all grew up together, so it feels way too familial for my liking. Back to Aries' POV, we meet one of Blaze's best friends. I don't know if it's Sela or Salah, it's spelled S-E-L-A-H, I'm just gonna say Salah, who is also in the hospital because her brother is battling cancer. Salah and her brother bring absolutely nothing to this story. Salah herself shows up a few more times, but it's never for more than like 1 or 2 pages. She doesn't have a lot of dialogue. We never meet this brother with cancer who is only mentioned like once later on in the book, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't even have a name. These characters did not need to be in this story, and I find it really weird to use struggling with a deadly disease as like some kind of throwaway filler to try and make your story seem more interesting. Nana gets released from the hospital, and Aries is in charge of taking her home, and he stops by Chick-fil-A to get her something other than hospital food to eat. And I guess Maeve Hazel is not an ally, because out of all of the fast food places to write into your book, it had to be the hyper-religious organization that supports conversion therapy. Honestly, this chapter was pretty pointless. It just showed to serve how protective he is of Blaze and Nana, and literally nothing happened plot-wise. We return to Blaze, and she's thinking about how nice it is to have everyone back together and things to be returning to normal. Aries and August made sure I had everything I needed, treating me like their own sibling, though I don't know if Aries would fit into that category. I love how the author was like, we absolutely have a family dynamic, but I need to make it explicitly clear that Aries and I don't see each other as siblings, you know, because they're definitely going to be later, and that would have been weird. Blaze is having some internal conflict about telling the boys about how she met their mother. She at least wants to make sure that Tamara gets to rehab and doesn't immediately leave it the moment it gets too hard before she does tell them. This scene was really weird and uncomfortable. Blaze puts her grandmother to bed, takes a shower, and then puts on nothing but a crop top and pink panties. And when she gets to her room, Aries is there. And this part was just so gross to read. So basically, like, this guy just enters her room without her permission and knowledge while she's in the shower, and then she goes in and she's like, hey, you should knock before going into someone's room. And he's literally just like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, that is such a gross breach of privacy already. She then intentionally makes a show of like walking around her room and bending over while he's ogling her crotch and then he demands that she put on boxers to cover up, and when she doesn't, he forces her onto her bed and pries her legs open because he's decided that if she won't put on the boxers, he's going to do it himself. My guy, you are in her bedroom without her permission. She doesn't have to do shit. If you don't want her flaunting her ass in front of you, you can leave. This part was so deeply uncomfortable to read, and we are only 55 pages into this book. After, forcing her to put clothes on, he then tucks her in and reads her this stupid bedtime story. And at that point, I started to feel like this relationship between them feels kind of infantilizing, which just added a whole new level of uncomfortable to an already kind of uncomfortable relationship dynamic. Blaze meets up with Tamara, and I get what the author was getting at, but I had a lot of problems with two particular lines in this book. Because when you love someone who's changed over time, you can't undo the strong feelings you once had. Not if they hurt you, not if they turn into a completely different person. And it's inhuman to stay nonchalant under the eyes that once looked at me with so much love. The kind of love only a mother can offer. Mostly because Tamara isn't innately a bad person. I don't think anyone can be fully good or bad. We all have our strengths and flaws. The best we can do is try to balance them. Reading this part made me extremely mad because it felt like Maeve was generalizing this particular experience, that even if a loved one has hurt you multiple times, it's inhuman to not still love them. That kind of sentiment can be really harmful for people who have had to cut off toxic family for their own well-being. I wouldn't have had an issue with it if it was worded in a way to say that Blaze is incapable of shutting her out because of the affection she still has and hopes that Tamara can recover. But because it uses general statements, it feels directed towards everyone who has this kind of relationship with an abusive or toxic family member, and that was just not okay. On their way to rehab, Tamara begs Blaze to not tell the boys. She says that she'll only do the 6 months Blaze set up for her if she promises not to tell them. Tamara is introduced as this kind of master manipulator, but this is really one of the only instances that we see her actually using a manipulation tactic, and it's not even a good one. That's just an ultimatum. Blaze's car breaks down immediately after dropping Tamara off, and she's an hour out of town, and she can't call Aries for help because she can't tell him that she's there because she's decided to stick her nose into his family business without his knowledge. And while all of this is happening, Aries is having a baby fit because Blaze has been gone all day and he has no idea where she is or what she's up to. At one point, August is like, maybe she's on a date, and Aries absolutely is not happy about that, and I'm sitting here like, tough shit, my guy, you're not her romantic partner. You had the chance to date her when y'all were kids and you beefed it. You don't have the right to get pissy at the idea of her dating someone. Blaze gets her car towed and takes an Uber home, and this creep is literally watching her from his window, his place, so that when he sees her get home, he immediately heads over to interrogate her on where she's been all day. And she straight up tells him that she doesn't want to deal with him, but when she closes the door on his face, his thought process is, well, she didn't lock it, so that must mean she wants me to follow her. And he chases Blaze inside. This man has no concept of boundaries or personal space. He's actually so controlling and possessive, and it's genuinely really uncomfortable to read because she's quite literally in this scene running from him to get to her room and lock him out, and even then he's still making demands of her through her door. Again, I get that the author was 19 when she wrote this book, but oh my god, this man is actually so scary. If I saw people reacting like this in real life, I'd be calling the police on this guy, and I don't even like the police, ACAB. And get this, when Blaze doesn't open her door, this man goes back to his home where he gets on his roof and then onto her roof and climbs into her room through her unlocked window. Are you going to talk to me now? I ask and drop to the floor, leaning my back against the wall. Do I have a choice? She's still looking up. No, I say, because it's the truth. Okay. Girl, you need to run. This man is redder than the Danish flag. They don't actually talk about the issue. He just hangs out with her until she's about to fall asleep, and then he gets up and undresses her for bed, which felt, again, super infantilizing because why are you, a grown-ass man undressing a grown-ass woman who isn't even your spouse and is perfectly capable of doing it herself. He gets a sudden text from his mother that he ignores, and we learn that she tore their family apart by being an addict and cheating on their dad, and the last time she showed up was a year ago, where she acted like a clean, loving mother for all of 2 months before dipping again and breaking Blaze and August hearts. So he has zero faith in his mother, and I'll be honest, I could relate to this situation. So despite how much I hate this guy, his anger and distrust of Tamara is absolutely warranted. We jump forward a couple of weeks and Blaze is back to working at the coffee/bookshop. A popular author is having a book signing event, but we don't really focus on her at all because the author decided to dedicate this chapter to Aries openly ogling Blaze's boobs and asks if her bra matches her pink panties. You know, the ones from that time he forcefully put boxers on her after barging into her room without permission. Honestly, I find it really jarring when women write male characters who make underwear jokes like that, because I thought this was like a universal thing that women hated, yet here we are romanticizing the most immature, lowbrow level jokes. Even though Blaze's shift ends 3 hours after his, Aries insists on waiting for her to get off and being the one to drive her home, even though she was going to carpool with Salah. His eyes have darkened 10 shades blacker, thick brows shadowing under them. He clears his throat, unlocks the car. No words addressed. Did this man become a demon all of a sudden? What do you mean 10 shades blacker? Girl, get out of there. When he finally stops undressing her with his eyes, he tells her that he'll fix her car for her and also talk to their boss to get their schedules lined up, which... why would you need to work at the same time if you're gonna fix her car for her? That doesn't make any sense. After Aries drops Blaze off at home, he sees another car in front of his house, and we find out that it's his father, who apparently abandoned the boys after everything that happened with Tamara. And he's shown up again for the first time in like 6 years to tell his sons that he's moving back home, and his current girlfriend, half his age, is pregnant. At this point, I realize that Aries gives his dad way more grace than he does his mother. He refuses to read the text that Tamara sends him, and she's totally dead to him, but his dad, who ran off while they were teenagers, shows up to tell him that he's excited to have another kid, and Aries is able to have a polite conversation with him. This is such a gross double standard. Don't get me wrong, I dislike Tamara, but if you're going to hold one parent accountable for being and abandoning their kids, you should probably do it for the other parent who did the exact same thing. It very much feels like Tamara is demonized more because she's an addict. It's okay if dad abandons his sons because at least he didn't have an affair and abuse substances when he did it. There might be a chance he didn't even realize how messed up his decision to leave was, and considering the only reason he came back after 5 years, during which we never saw him in person, was to deliver the news about the pregnancy, I'd say he doesn't realize it now either. But I've learned to leave the past behind, and I know dad deserves to be happy, even though I don't know what the happiness means for him. I want dad to have it. Why does dad get to be forgiven and deserve the right to be happy? Aries then starts thinking about himself and what he wants for his life and how he thought he would have someone by now, but every time he goes on a date, he compares the girl to Blaze. So why don't you date Blaze then? You're clearly obsessed with her and she wants you too, apparently, because she's going around flaunting her ass at you. What is holding you back? Don't get me wrong, I love a slow burn mutual pining, but I feel like that only works when the characters aren't aware of the other's feelings and attraction. That is not the case with this book. We're less than 100 pages in, and these two horn dogs are literally sting at the dinner table with Nana and August right next to them. I'm so confused looking at my own goddamn notes. Squeeze line. Where's the squeeze line? God, where's the squeezing line? In these texts, he's asking her about the color of her underwear, and then he's like demanding her to go into the bathroom and send a picture of the underwear that she's wearing. And when she gets up to go into the bathroom, the three of us eat in silence as excruciating minutes pass with no sign from Blaze. I give my throbbing a squeeze, not resisting the urge. One more and I'll come here, for sake. Have some respect. Nana is recovering from a stroke, you nasties. You'd think that after this, the two would either get it over with and or at the very least have a conversation about what's going on between them. But just like they've never talked about the kiss when she was 15, they just go on like nothing happened. I don't know, if my best friend and the guy I've been in love with my whole life started demanding that I send him racy pictures of my underwear, I'd be like, hey dude, what are we? So it's Blaze's birthday, and we learn that her parents died on her 7th birthday, and she has this tradition where she goes to the beach to talk to her parents because Nana encouraged her to do that to cope with her grief as a child. Instead of talking though, she writes her parents a letter and looks for bottles left on the beach to put the letters in and send them out to sea. Ignoring the fact that this is still technically littering and possibly endangering sea life, I actually thought that this was really sweet. This was really the only time in the whole book that I felt like Blaze was actually a relatable and sympathetic character. This scene actually made me a little sad when reading because she ended up not finding a bottle and she just rips up her note and then cries the whole way home. This chapter was the only time I felt like this book wasn't a chore to read. I kind of wish that it had more moments like this of her dealing with grief as opposed to all the weird and uncomfortable scenes of tension with Aries. Then this moment is immediately ruined when Blaze returns home and everyone throws her a surprise party. Aries and Blaze are alone in the kitchen and he knows that she was crying. When I speak, she avoids my gaze. Why were you crying? I ask, my jaw twitching so hard it could pop. Blaze takes a gulp of air, a spark of indefinable emotion reflecting in her pupils. Even the smile she was wearing loosens a little. What do you mean? I always cry. This new tug of her lips is forced. My head drops between my shoulders. There's no birthday Blaze won't cry on, but she's not telling me anything about the why. All I get is her coming home with tears dried on her cheeks, then acting like it didn't even happen. That pisses me the off. My guy, what do you mean? Of course she's gonna be sad on the day that her parents died. Also, she doesn't need to tell you about why she's crying. It's pretty obvious, you freak. Do you not trust me? I breathe out and look at her straight in the eyes. Is that why you're not telling me? This isn't about you. She doesn't have to tell you about her grief. Stop making this about you and your feelings. God, I hate this man. I do dunk a lot on main love interests, but this man genuinely infuriates me. It also, like, it gets even worse when Blaze goes to open her presents. She gets 3 in total from August. It's a necklace, a bracelet, and a ring, all with the initials ABA for Aries, Blaze, and August. Apparently, when they were kids, Blaze had made them all matching friendship necklaces with the initials, but she lost hers and was so upset that the boys stopped wearing theirs so that she wouldn't feel left out. And that is the dumbest thing that I've ever read, because why the didn't she just make another one? Or they could have made a new one for her. So yeah, 2 out of her 3 birthday gifts are actually for Aries and August. Imagine getting like 3 presents on your birthday and 2 of them aren't even for you. I would be so pissed. Sure, it's a nice sentiment, but they could have done this at any other time, not on this girl's birthday. Aries waits to give Blaze his gift until later that night because he wants them to be alone, and it's one of those cameo videos of Blaze's favorite author wishing her happy birthday because he works as an editor and has connections. She's really excited and tells him to pinch her, you know, because it feels like a dream. And this man's first thought is that he wants to pinch her nipple. I keep having to remind myself that Maeve was a teenager when she wrote this book because it is genuinely so concerning how she portrays this guy's thoughts and actions as sweet and romantic. Aries also makes an appointment for her to get a tattoo as another gift because he's all tatted up and he remembered her saying a really long time ago that she wanted one as well. This part was really stupid. I don't want to come off as some kind of tattoo elitist, artist, I don't care that some people prefer smaller tattoos. You know, get what you want. But the tattoo that she chooses to get is like this tiny moon near her elbow that literally took all of 10 minutes. She chose a moon because that's his nickname for her, because he used to read her a book called I Love You to the Moon and Back or some as a kid. When she shows it to him, he calls it epic and acts like it's this super amazing tattoo to get because it feels like she's marked a part of him on her. And I'm like, my guy, it's a tiny moon that took 10 minutes. Come on now. This part was just really cringy to read, and I kind of like, it reads like Maeve Hazel herself doesn't have any tattoos, and so she thinks that like the tiniest minimalist tattoo is like, oh my god, it's so cool, it's so bad. Like, girl, shut up. After getting her tattoo, they go home to show August, but Aries sees a text on August's phone from Tamara, and he immediately gets angry and storms out. Blaze tries to go to him to talk about it, and Aries kisses her, not because he wants to kiss her, but specifically to make her shut up, because he doesn't want to talk about what upset him so much. This man is such a hypocrite. Every time she's in distress, he ignores every single boundary she puts in place to try and strong arm her into talking to him. But when he doesn't want to talk about his feelings, he does the one thing that he knows will chase her away, and that it's just a gross, skeevy thing to do. I also want to take a moment to bring up the fact that this is the first time we're revisiting the whole no kissing rule that she committed to when she was 15. I thought that the story would be more focused on how this moment messed her up fundamentally and explore how it affected the way she navigates relationships with other men. But as far as we know, Blaze has never had any kind of romantic relationship or intimacy since that moment. This was established in the prologue and then not mentioned for 130 pages. To be honest, I had actually forgotten about the no kissing rule because not once was it ever brought up in the story until right now. So after pulling that move, Aries tries to get into her room from the roof, but she's ignoring him, and this stain starts causing a scene by shouting at her through her window until she lets him in. Not only is this guy a hypocrite who ignores boundaries, but he's also a giant man-child, and I'm supposed to be cheering for him? Absolutely not. She lets Aries in, and of course immediately lets his bullshit slide, and there's several times in the text where she refers to herself as being a bitch for trying to ignore him or express that she's mad at him. I think it's so telling that this man can act like the biggest and be forgiven instantly, but the one time Blaze tries to express anger and hold a boundary, she instantly frames it as being unreasonable or overdramatic. Based on this and how Tamara is framed while the men in this book are let off way easier, I get the feeling that the author is simply not a girl's girl. This part was really weird because Blaze tells Aries to leave, and he does. She goes to take a shower, and when she comes back, he's in her room again. They do finally talk about the kiss when she was 15, and he tells her that he wants them to start over again. I feel like it would have made more sense for them to have just had this conversation when he was trying to apologize instead of having him leave just to immediately show back up. That whole shower scene was totally pointless, but I have a feeling that it was an excuse for the author to write them having this conversation while Blaze was naked, because apparently she was. They essentially agreed to having a relationship as a test trial to see if this is what they both really want, because she doesn't believe that he's actually serious about wanting her. And this is where the no kissing rule comes in, because she thinks that she won't be able to move past her feelings if she does let him kiss her. Girl, you haven't been able to move past those feelings for 6 years now. Stop acting like won't mean anything as long as y'all don't kiss. She also wonders if the two of them could really be anything more than friends, and I immediately thought back to the sexting scene where he demanded to see her panties, and I'm like, so do you have that kind of relationship with all of your guy friends, or... She doesn't, of course, because Blaze's only friends are Aries, August, and Sella, who isn't even all that present, has zero personality, and really didn't need to be there. We spend a couple chapters dealing with Aries being pissed at his brother while Blaze tries to get him to work things out with August, and Blaze realizing that she also needs to tell Aries about the fact fact that she sent Tamara to rehab because he's so bent out of shape over August's dishonesty. She does finally tell him, and this moment was so anticlimactic because I really thought there was going to be more drama surrounding the issue, but Aries wasn't mad about it at all, and even says that any one of them would have done what she did in the moment when sending her away. And I just think it's a weird double standard that there's zero anger towards Blaze for helping Tamara and hiding it from him, but he refuses to talk to his brother for wanting to maintain contact with his mother. We immediately breeze past this topic and move on to the horny part, and I thought this particular paragraph was pretty funny to read. That no kissing rule is killing me now that her lips form a smile that begs to be kissed. Me for being the good guy who wants to respect her boundaries. Is the respecting boundaries in the room with us? All this man has done the entire book is completely disregard her when she asks for space and imposes on her, like fixing her car and driving her to and from work when she says that she's going to carpool with a friend. Not once has he at any point actually listened to her when she's tried to set a boundary until now. So I think it's really funny how he's trying to put on this respectful good guy act like it's something he should be applauded for. Her nod is quick to come, eyes flashing with pure lust. Please, she croaks, and the sound makes my jolt in my pants. Maeve, I don't think that's the word you wanted to use. Croaking is not a sound that I would consider sexy, and certainly not a sound that I would ever include in a scene. Look, you feel so good already, and I'm not even inside you. I sneak into the crease of Blaze's neck, inhaling her addictive scent. She tilts her head, responsive to the kisses I place on her skin. Why didn't we do this sooner? You know, I have been asking this question since the panty sexting scene. Why has it taken so long for you guys to do this when you've literally been every other chapter for the entire first half of the book? Aries decides to do a little foreplay by quoting one of the spicy books he was reading earlier in the story, but it's some of the most tame I have ever read, and I thought that it was really funny that the lines, he traces her silky skin with the top of his fingers, palm disappearing under her t-shirt and cupping one of her full breasts through the material of her bra, and he teases her thighs with kisses, were what got her all hot and heavy. Like, come on, dude. If you're gonna quote smut, at least get more freaky with it. I also couldn't understand the logistics of this scene, because one moment she's got her back turned to him because he's slapping her and she's looking over her shoulder at him, but then there's this line. I let her step forward, grabbing her by the waist and dragging her on top of me. So she had her back turned to you, but now she's walking towards you, so you're both standing up, but now she's on top of you. Like, did Maeve even proofread this? These two have gone through like 3 different positions in less than 2 paragraphs, and I feel like I'm doing mental gymnastics trying to figure out what position they're in and like how they got there. We switch to Blaze's perspective now. His fingers work my sending shivers through my body before he takes a good amount of my arousal and puts it on his. The only thing I know is that I've never been this full. His and the hand on my move in synchrony, chasing what's theirs. I think the line, like, I was originally very confused about he takes a good amount of my arousal and puts it on his dick is like lubing, but then it immediately says that she's never been this full. So when was the insertion? The transitions in this scene are really weird and very confusing, and I don't read a whole lot of hetero smut, so I don't know whether or not this is considered good as far as contemporary romance goes, but this is definitely one of the worst scenes I've ever read, just period. As soon as they're done doing the nasty, Blaze panics and leaves because feelings are scary. Aries does a little introspection and figures that he needs to gain her trust by making things right with the people in his life, starting with his brother. They talk for like 5 seconds and immediately make up. Even though Aries was so betrayed by finding out he was talking to Tamara, suddenly he's like, she's your mother. I can't fault you for wanting to have a relationship with her. Except You did. Like, you were really pissed about it. We find out that Tamara had physically abused Ares during her moments where she relapsed, and we also find out that apparently Ares is deaf or hard of hearing because it talks about the night that she got drunk and cheated on their dad, and August didn't realize because he was young and Ares gave him headphones so he wouldn't hear them, while Ares took out his hearing aids. Not once in this story up to this point has it mentioned that he wears aids until now. I get wanting to have a disabled character who has more going on than their disability, but I think it's pretty important to also make it known to the reader that said character is disabled before page 198. I also feel like it should have found some way to make it known to the reader that Tamara was not just an addict, but was also doing child abuse before we made it 200 pages in, because up until this point, it just made her seem like she was this awful human being because she drinks a lot and cheated on her husband, not that she was actually beating her child over the head and pushing him down the stairs. These things just kind of felt like they came out of nowhere. Another issue that I have with this book is that it spends way too long focusing on how obsessed Blaze and Ares are with each other, and when it does shift back to literally anything that doesn't revolve around them each other, it's so short-lived. After that first night together, Blaze meets up with Ares and August, and all three of them find out how Tamara begged Blaze to not tell Ares and August that she was being taken to rehab, but the very same day, Tamara told August everything about Blaze taking her to rehab. I don't know what this was supposed to accomplish. It was clear that it was supposed to be like this weird tactic to play them all against each other to show how manipulative and evil she is, but you could also easily say that she just wanted her sons to know on her terms. It's not like it caused any animosity between the three. It was just supposed to be this moment where they felt betrayed by her. And then they immediately moved past it after talking about it one time. It's supposed to be this hard-hitting moment like, wow, I was such a fool for trusting her. Anyway, we will not be lingering on this at all because we need to focus on how hot I look for our dinner date with Ares' father and his new trophy wife. You know, the man who abandoned his two minor sons and didn't once visit them until he started a new family. I still cannot believe that Court gets a pass for what he did to his kids. Just because he didn't drink himself stupid or beat his son doesn't mean that he's not just as much a piece of shit as Tamara is. Blaze meets Court's new baby mama, who is half his age, and this paragraph sent me. This woman is gorgeous. Green eyes, sharp cheeks, beautiful lips, and a body that every girl would envy while being pregnant. She's dressed classily, and there's something about her I like. I can't put my finger on it quite yet, because this is one of those moments where I have a feeling about a person, and I'll keep it until proven differently. Yes, because every beautiful woman who dresses classy is automatically a good person. It is scientifically proven that if you have a rockin' bod while pregnant and dress refined, you can't be a bad person. And we're proven just how much of a saint she is when we learn that she used to work at a school for the deaf, and Blaze is immediately like, we're going to be best friends.
He's pleasuring her with his toes. He is stroking her with his toe in the middle of a crowded restaurant. His father and brother are seated at the same table as him while he does things to her with his foot. Oh my fucking god.
That's right, everyone. Ares decided to play coochie footsie with Blaze in a crowded restaurant next to his father and brother. Honestly, that video didn't even capture my initial reaction when I read that scene. I was so horrified that I couldn't speak for like a good 15 seconds. I don't think I've ever had such a visceral reaction while reading, and I've read some pretty wild things. I'm sorry, I just can't stop thinking about how gross that is to put your foot on someone's junk like that. I mean, I know that some people have a thing for feet, but it's just so unsanitary. Like, they're out in public and his feet are not clean. Get that thing away from her coochie, Mr. Man. It was at this point in the story that I became very very afraid because of the way this book is written. Like, you can't really tell what is going to happen next, and now I was just terrified of what weird sex is going to get thrown at me when I least expect it. Another big criticism that I have about this book is just the writing and sentence structures as a whole. I haven't been focusing too much on Maeve's writing specifically because she was 19 when she wrote it, and I don't want to rip apart someone's writing skill from such a young age. But at the same time, in her About the Author, she states that her book at 18 was such a success that she is now able to live as a full-time author, which is not easy. To be able to live off of and pay your bills with just your writing at such a young age is almost unheard of. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't think that her writing meets that standard to be able to do that. I'll give you a little example of what I'm talking about. Ares nods at whatever he just agreed to with himself and straightens his back until he takes away every evidence of his body on mine. Just like that quick. And, Ares whirls on his feet, the growing, proud smirk on his lips paling into the darkness. Objectively, this is not good writing. What does that mean, his smirk is paling into the darkness? This book is just riddled with really bizarre word salad sentences like this. And another thing that I realized about this book is that the author never uses descriptors unless it's specifically about the main characters and how they look or what they're wearing or feeling. I think it mentioned the town that they live in once. I can't remember if it said the name of the town at the very beginning, but other than that, we don't know anything about the area where Blaze lives. We know that she works in a book/coffee shop, but we are never told what the place looks like or what the vibes are. When they went out to dinner with Aries' dad, we're not told what kind of restaurant they're eating in. Is this a high-end classy place, or is he foot-fingering Blaze in the middle of Olive Garden? If it does not pertain to what Blaze and Aries are feeling or how they're looking, it's not important. Every place that they go to and every event that doesn't revolve around the main characters obsessing over each other literally feels like filler, because the moment something even remotely interesting happens outside of the relationship, it's given little to no attention. It honestly just felt like the author threw it all in because she can't write a story based on just these two struggling with the will they, won't they. But it's so short-lived and rushed, as if she doesn't actually care about any of it and just wanted to get to the sexy stuff. And I just really struggle to understand how writing like this can become so popular and make so much money when it feels so flat and soulless. The author doesn't care about the story and the setting. She only seems to care about writing sexual tension between her main characters. But you know what they say, sells. You guys remember how Blaze was writing a book? Well, Maeve also seemed to remember that fact as well, because we're finally hearing more about it. It's only brought up very briefly, and all we know about it is that apparently it's so good that it kept Aries up all night, and now he wants to edit it and send it out to publishers. This part was very unrealistic to me because Aries it does reveal he's only 23 years old. So he's been, and it says that he's been editing for years and works with big name romance authors. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a degree to become an editor, but most places would require you to have a bachelor's degree. And I doubt that any big name authors would agree to work with indie editors without a degree. Which leads me to my next criticism. This book never says whether or not Aries went to college to become an editor. We know he took jobs like working as a mechanic to help raise his younger brother because dad walked out on them. But if that's the case, Aries would have had to get a job straight out of college and has built a career with top name romance authors in just 2 years. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just very unrealistic. Soren has a childhood friend in editing and publishing, and she did not get a secure job in the industry until she was in her late 20s. Something really funny that Soren also pointed out about this book is is the summary on the back literally states that Aries doesn't know what love is supposed to look like because he only has his parents' relationship to go off of, but he specifically specializes in editing romance novels. So, which is it, Maeve? Is he some master editor of romance, or does he not know what romance is supposed to look like? I also find it ironic how one of the main characters is an editor, but this book doesn't feel like it was edited at all. I found a few typos, but I'm mainly talking about lines like, "A shaky breath sows its way past my lips." They immediately segue from talking about her book to being horny because these characters are physically incapable of having a normal conversation without that interaction immediately turning. I do have to hand it to Maeve. She writes Aries and scenes from his POV exactly how I imagine a straight man would write erotica. And that is to say, it focuses a lot on her bouncing breasts and perky nipples and has the kind of dirty talk that only men think women like. He sits up from on top of me, then slaps my pussy when he sees I'm not cooperating. So, we're just slapping vaginas now, just like... I'm supposed to find this sexy? The very next day, August reveals to them that Tamara checked out of rehab and is coming to see them all, and there's this big standoff scene between all four of them where they're all standing up to her and telling her to leave, and even August is angry enough that he doesn't fall for her act. This scene was almost interesting, except that I still don't see how August knowing about her being in rehab and asking Blaze not to tell Aries is this huge break of trust. Like, yeah, it was but also I don't really know why she would have done that when the three of them are around each other all the time, and of course they were gonna find out that August knows she's back in town. It's weird because Tamara is painted as this master manipulator, but when it comes to showcasing that manipulation, the author does a really bad job of doing it. For example, her big fallback plan is to cry and call August Sunshine, and Blaze is like, "Oh, she's good." It's not. That's not convincing manipulation. I also noticed this weird shift with Blaze. In the beginning, there was a lot of conflicting emotions. She went on about how it was inhuman to ignore the suffering of someone who you adored as a child and had been such a good mother, to having absolutely zero feelings towards her. The narrative originally set Tamara up as being this complex character in the beginning, but as it went on, it just started to paint her as this evil woman with absolutely zero redeeming qualities, which contradicts the way Blaze viewed her when she first appeared. Throughout the story, we're not given examples of the ways that she had been a good mother, aside from the fact that August had been her favorite. The narrative only focuses on how awful a person she was, so I couldn't really understand why she was given so many chances up until this point, because as a reader, I was never given any examples of the kind of person she was to Blaze and August to make them feel conflicted. We never got any fond memories that contradict Aries' experiences with her to explain why they still loved her. I think this book could have been better if the author had spent less time on making every interaction between Aries and Blaze and more time actually exploring the complex themes of having an emotionally manipulative parent and how their experiences and feelings differ that may cause conflict in their relationships with one another. Instead, it's treated as this weird little piece of filler that's just dropped in from time to time to remind us of their conflicting feelings, but never expands on it. Immediately after sending Tamara away, Blaze gets a meeting with a publisher and signs a book deal, but she's worried about Tamara showing up again and ruining her good mood, and Aries offers to take her to get something to eat. Food is the key to Blaze's heart, and if that's going to make her happy right now, I'll give her as much food as she wants. Since when? Not once in this book has Blaze ever been particularly food motivated. She's never expressed a desire to eat anything when she's in a rough spot emotionally. You can't just throw in a random character trait out of the blue 288 pages in. Later that night, Aries comes to Blaze's room, and for the first time in this entire book, their interaction doesn't turn in any way. Aries can't sleep, but he seems to be in some kind of mood and not really looking for so they just sleep together. Aries admits that he has feelings for Blaze and how he wants to make sure that this thing between them is real and it's something that they can weather together because when he's in it for the long haul. I didn't hate this scene. It was nice to see them having a real moment where they were honest with each other and where it didn't immediately get ruined by becoming horny. Tamara shows up again and tries to talk to August and Aries, but they send her away and Aries officially files for a restraining order against her. Tamara later breaks into the house drunk while he and Blaze are trying to get down, and instead of calling the police and then escaping to her house through the window like Blaze suggested, Aries is like, promise me you won't come downstairs no matter what. I guess because he needed to be the one to face his mother? I don't know. I didn't understand this reasoning at all. He drags Tamara out of his house and she jumps him, but he throws her off, and then she screams something at him about how everything is his fault, and if they hadn't taken him in, she and Court and August would have been happy, and this part gets really confusing. This is all your fault, she screams from the bottom of her lungs. If we wouldn't have taken you, Court, August, and I would have been so happy. You ruined it all. She spits the words out, rage swimming through her eyes. Weird way of saying it, but I guess she can't stand the thought she birthed me. So, is he or isn't he adopted? That line about Tamara not being able to stand the thought of having given birth to him was really throwing me. I should have let you rot in that orphanage. That's the last thing I hear before everything goes black. Oh my god, did Tamara just kill this guy? We jump back to Blaze's POV, and apparently it's been 20 minutes since she called the cops, but they still haven't shown up, and she actually hears Tamara break something over Aries' head, but can't get to him because apparently his bedroom door only locks from the outside, which is really weird because normally you're locking people out of your bedroom, not in. She runs to her house from the roof, and when she gets to Aries' front door, she finds him unconscious and bleeding, and instead of being sensible and calling for help as well as an ambulance, this goofy bitch sits there sobbing into his shirt because she's afraid of losing him. Apparently not afraid enough to do anything preventative. This scene was so stupid. Aries did all of that stupid just so the author could put them in this life and death situation so that Blaze could realize what he means to her and kiss him while she thinks he's dying. It's so stupid for the author herself to write in a sensitive alternative where they could both be safe and just have the love interest go, no, I'm gonna go downstairs and be an idiot. Also, while Blaze was having a meltdown over Aries' body, Nana, being the only intelligent character in this entire book, called an ambulance who still arrived before the cops did, and they take Aries to the hospital. All right, so the adoption thing is true, and apparently Aries was just never told, and this was how he found out, which was stupid, because at no point did it even hint that Aries didn't look like his parents or brother. This was just a random twist that came out of nowhere. It was literally just used to explain why Tamara hated Aries so much and only loved August, but that just was really kind of dumb because there are countless instances of parents playing favorites and hating one of their children for literally no reason, so that still could have worked. It was just a really pointless twist. So things just become very bad for everyone. Not only did Aries get attacked, learn he's adopted, and then lose all of his hearing after she hit him over the head with a bottle or something. But Blaze was also dropped by her publisher because she was in the news following the attack, and they basically told her that because she was involved in some kind of negative scandal, they're not going to publish her book anymore. And she and her mans were attacked. But okay, do publishing companies actually do that? It's not like she had any control over the fact that they were attacked. Some time passes, and Ares and Blaze finally confess to each other and kiss, and it's like the best kissing they've ever done, and it's so romantic. Not really. Ares starts taking sign language lessons, and the police do catch Tamara. Ares has made the decision that he's never gonna tell Blaze and August about the truth of him being adopted, or try to search for his real parents, and I'm sat here thinking, why was this even included in the story? Because it serves no purpose to the narrative at all. Maeve Hazel does realize that some parents can just despise their children and blame all their problems on their kid without there having to be a reason, right? That's kind of the whole thing about abusive parents. There typically isn't any logical reason to justify it. Ares learns about how Blaze was dropped by the publishing company, and Blaze is strangely okay with that because out of nowhere she's decided she wants to start a self-publishing company with him. Dream big, I guess. Anyway, we're finally at the very end of the book. We jump ahead 3 years, and Blaze and Ares are married with a kid. It's Blaze's birthday, and they both go to the beach to do that birthday ritual where she sends her dead parents a letter and adds more waste to the environment. In this moment, she reveals to Ares that she's pregnant with her second child, and they're having this very touching, emotional moment. And do you want to know what Ares says? Do you want to know what the final line of this god-awful book is? If I f you right now, do you think we'll have twins? Jeez. There was so much about this book that was bad, but I would have to say that my biggest issue was how it handled certain sensitive topics. For starters, the cancer brother. He is only mentioned in passing twice, and I think it's really weird and insensitive to people who have loved ones or are themselves struggling with this disease to just have that fact thrown in as pointless filler. Honestly, that whole thing should have just been edited out. It never should have been in this book because it didn't contribute anything to the story. But the big thing that I think Maeve handled extremely poorly was the way Tamara as an addict was depicted. In the beginning of the book, she was presented as a more human and complex character. She was a good mother who was adored by Blaze and August, but she did really terrible things when she relapsed and caused their lives to fall apart. But Blaze and August couldn't let go of the woman that they loved as children. But then, out of nowhere, the narrative turns her into this awful person with zero redeemable qualities who is heartless and conniving, and it just really felt like she was demonized because she was an addict. Their father, Court, was able to come back into their lives after walking out on them at 17 and 13, and he was only presented as this guy who had his heart broken, but is now happy and healing, and they just allow him to be a dad again without any kind of confrontation about what he did. I think Maeve handled this topic of addiction really, really poorly. This book should have had sensitivity readers, but I don't think it did, because I think the whole thing was just in really poor taste. And the last huge criticism I have is the toe scene. And apparently a lot of other people did too. Sora and I looked up reviews of this book, and a lot of people were just as traumatized by it as I was. Some people said that they DNF'd the book when they got to that part, and honestly, I'm amazed that they even managed to get that far. If it weren't for the purpose of making this video, I would have DNF'd this book literally within the first 70 pages. There is a part of me that's somewhat interested in reading the most recent book published by this author, just to see if she's improved at all over the last couple of years. Safety Measures does seem to be the lowest rated of her works, so maybe this one was just a bad egg. Who knows? I might revisit her stuff in the future, just to see how her style has improved. I hope. At this point in the video, I like to go over things that I did like about a book, just so that, you know, the video doesn't end on a negative note. There really is not a lot that I can say I thought was good about this book, but I will say I did like the birthday scene at the very beginning where Blaze was doing her yearly ritual to feel connected to her parents. I did think it was touching, and I would have liked if the story put more attention towards Blaze and how she deals with grief, or really just focused on developing her character more outside of how horny she was for Ares Blaze 24/7. This was literally the only time I thought Blaze had any kind of depth. And the only other thing I liked about this book was Nana. Nana was the only good character in this entire story, and everyone else was either terribly written or just offered nothing to the narrative. Anyway, that was Safety Measures by Maeve Hazel. Awful book. Don't read it, or do if you like to read media that makes you feel like your brain is melting out of your ears. You know, I can't tell you how to live your life. That's all that I have for today. Thank you guys for joining me on this terrible journey. If you did enjoy this video, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. In the meantime, make sure that you all take care of yourselves, and as always, remember to keep it real. Finally done.